In this last segment on my personal journey with scoliosis, I'm going to talk about how the Alexander technique helped me evaluate and participate in a whole series of other treatments and systems. First, of course, there was the intellectual influence, where I created this new field, body conscious design, and wrote a book, The Chair, Rethinking Culture, Body, and Design, which helped me enormously, and it turns out it helps a whole bunch of other people, even who don't have scoliosis. Because scoliosis doesn't go away, I was always curious about anybody who claimed to be able to help deal with it or to cure it. So I would always give it ye old college try. That is to say, I would listen, and if it made logical sense, if there was any kind of logic, I would check it out and try it. The Alexander technique was really useful in helping me integrate the benefits of other systems. Rolfing was particularly important to me, structural integration it's also called, because it unglues all the connective tissue, the fascia, so that gives you greater freedom where you've quit moving in a certain way. And when you can move, that means you can move into greater harmony and wholeness. Now, I also noticed that if people don't have movement training, they recreate their old bodies after about a year after Rolfing. So Alexander was really important in learning how to take advantage of the structural freedom that Rolfing provided. It was around that same time that craniosacral osteopathy became popular. It's slightly different than regular osteopathy because it works on the membranes inside the skull that wrap around the brain stem and the spinal cord. So I benefited from that, and again, the freedom that the therapist is able to create physically, when you have the Alexander principles in mind, you're able to maintain and build upon that freedom. One of the very interesting and sort of surprising techniques I learned about was Tomatis listening therapy. Tomatis was a French audiologist who has a theory about the role of the ear in human development. I learned about a Tomatis therapist, a physician in Italy, who was working very specifically with people with scoliosis. So I went to visit her and had a couple sessions with her. And then I took the Tomatis therapy training at that time, which was only available in the US in Phoenix. And that brought a kind of internal freedom that I think is very valuable. On the external, kind of the other side of things, I also learned about a French system developed by a woman, Mézières, that argued that there are muscle chains that run through the body, and there's a long one from the feet up the legs, up to the back of the head, through the back. And their theory is you can't have a free back unless you have free legs. So I spent about 10 years learning how to stretch, and with the teacher of this system here in Berkeley, Patrick Rousselot. And it was then about that time that I also learned about body-mind centering, which gives us the concept of experiential anatomy. And that's where you learn about a physical structure externally, but then you learn how to go in, feel it in others, feel it in yourself, and then sort of take on the mind, if you will, quote unquote, the mind of that organ or that structure, that bone, that tissue. And so the external world and the internal world started definitely coming together in this particular therapy. And Alexander was totally in line with that because we work on internal thinking as well as external alignment and movement. With alpha brainwave training, I learned again about the power of the mind, about how you can deliberately choose to create alpha brainwaves as opposed to beta or theta or delta. And alpha is a very creative brainwave state, which can help you visualize moving towards the kind of harmony you'd like in your body. That experience taught me how powerful Alexander is in using the mind as well as external physical movement. That all set me up rather beautifully for an elaboration of the Alexander technique developed by Peter Grunwald called eye-body. His thesis is that the visual pathway, which runs from the eye all the way back to the visual cortex, back up here in the back of the skull where the pictures are assembled, is a little model of the human body, like it's called the homunculus, like a miniature of the body. And if you work on that set of structures, and there are many between here and here, you can be indirectly working on your body. So I use this technique to work on my spine. Most people use it to overcome short-sightedness or other problems with vision. So he teaches people how to see without using glasses by changing the way the brain works. Because as he said, the tree isn't blurry. The blurry is somewhere in here. So again, it's the power of the brain. That said, I went back to external fitness again with gyrotonics and gyrokinesis. I wanted a system for fitness that would build strength in a way that swimming cannot do. I still swim all the time, but I also wanted this other kind of land-based strength, but without straining my asymmetrical structure the way that yoga had done. And lo and behold, there's gyrotonics with its gyro meaning, round or circular or round. All of its movements have to do with rotation, so it really suited me. I will also add that gyrotonics without Alexander could be a little problematic if people let the weight of their head go back and down, which in Alexander we don't. We try to send the weight of the head forward and up off the end of the spine. All these systems have been helpful. I would like to say and admit that my progress has not been linear. I think it's important to share that. It's not been a straight line of just getting better, 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 better. It's more like always getting a little better, but having real significant setbacks. I want to be honest and share that. It's been up and down, but basically forward, as you'll see when we get to the tracings. I think the principle that I'd like to emphasize is what I'm now just calling the mutuality of internal and external change. That is to say that you have to be able to change the inside and the outside at the same time. The brain and the physical body, or the inside of the body as well as the outside of the body. Everything seems to have an internal and an external cooperation and coordination. That's why I don't think just straight physical therapy was very effective for me as a child, because it didn't have the emotional and psychological and mental cognitive component. In terms of my own progress, I'd say about 20 years ago, my thoracic curve unlocked. That is to say, the curve was pretty rigid like this, and it moved, but now it will move like this. And when I'm tired, it might collapse more, and when I'm rested, it gets more straight. But to my surprise, the lumbar curve, which I've always thought of as the compensatory curve, and I thought once the thoracic curve softened, the lumbar would say, "Oh, I don't have to be out over here," and it would just sort of go to the midline. But it doesn't work that way. The lumbar, those big, strong guys, have been the slowest to change. And they're just now starting to change. I've had flexible thoracic curve for over 20 years. Some of these changes have been so pronounced and exciting that I wanted to document them, but I didn't want to have x-rays all the time. First place, well, they're expensive, and doctors have to prescribe them, and it may not be particularly good for our health to have x-rays all the time. I mean, I know we get on airplanes and stuff, but still, why add extra grief? So one time after 3 weeks in a workshop in New Zealand, I felt so straight. I could palpate it with my hands. I could reach back and touch my spine like that and feel that the thoracic curve was straight. I could feel it when I woke up, that I didn't have any grind ache or grinding feeling. I just felt terrific. And so I asked my roommate, if I can get some tracing paper, let's just tape it on my back, and would you just trace where my spine is? And you'll see, that was January of 2007, and you'll see compared to my initial x-ray of 84, what a dramatic improvement I've managed to make. Since '07, I've been having people trace my spine after particularly effective therapeutic sessions with either a Rolfer or a chiropractor or an osteopath or a gyrotonic session or an Alexander session or a BMC session, etc. It's quite impressive how this very low-tech technique done with care, pointing just at where the tracer, the person doing the tracing, where they can feel the bone. And I usually give them feedback. Oh, yeah, you're on bone. Yes, that's bone. Yes, that's bone. They do it with care, but it's not high tech. And wow, it's surprisingly effective at showing change over time. Thank you for your interest, your attention, and I do hope this has been helpful for you.